Sophie Walker, paysagiste britannique renommée, vient de publier un ouvrage consacré au jardin japonais aux éditions Phaidon. C'est le fruit d'un travail de recherche de 9 ans et de rédaction qui aura duré 3 ans. C'est un livre qui se présente comme une somme sur son sujet. Après des études d'histoire de l'art, elle s'oriente vers l'horticulture et la botanique avant de se former au design de jardin. Elle est la plus jeune femme à avoir présenté un jardin au Chelsea Flower Show, le Cave Pavillon. Elle a collaboré avec des artistes et des architectes de grand renom, comme Anish Kapoor ou encore Zaha Hadid. Elle nous a accordé un entretien lors de son passage au Palais de Tokyo.
So I think the first preconception about the Japanese garden is that it's a space of contemplation. In other words, that it's a passive space. It's not passive, it's very active. The Japanese garden designer has a very intent control on the way in which we experience the gardens. So you might say that the Japanese garden designer is more similar to a dance choreographer than someone who makes a picture. It's not simply there for decorative purpose or for contemplation. It's there to provoke you into a bodily response and therefore a mind response. So the way in which the garden maker sets out a garden, one that's enterable, will use the path as a very directive tool. You walk in a particular way, and by walking along the path in the right way is to bring history and humility to the space. So you come with your prior knowledge and your prior understanding, but somehow the act of navigating these complicated stones, these gateways, is the act of bringing your mind and your body together as one and to actually pass through the space in a kind of unity. Now, once your body and mind has been set up as operating together, the garden maker can introduce certain obstacles or prompts. So you might have a wash basin. At the entrance of many gardens is a wash basin. Of course, they come from Shinto. Shinto is an animist, almost religious practice of, it's a ritual act of purity, a cleansing act in which, you're not actually cleansing yourself literally, it's a symbolic act, in other words. You then may have the lantern, the garden lantern, which is a motif that we all know in the Japanese garden. But it's not there for decorative purpose. It's not there because it looks pretty. It comes again from the Shinto shrine and it entered the garden in the 16th century. It's there because it represents something else. It brings to mind the shared cultural history in Japan and the shared national history of Shinto. The lantern was lining the votive, as a votive set of lanterns on the way up to a shrine. So it holds a light, but the light isn't bright enough to light your path. The light is symbolic. It's symbolic of the light of knowledge of the ancestors, the light of knowledge of the patriarchs in Buddhism. So you've got all these sort of symbolic thresholds, if you like, beyond which you understand something more, and that accumulation of things leads you deeper into a garden space. So for instance, the bridge in the garden is very important. It's the symbolic transitioning of space from one space, the space of not knowing, through into the space of knowing or enlightenment. And I think that's a very important deepening of space that happens in the Japanese garden. And what it means is that these are not simply spaces to be looked at in a contemplative way, but spaces that demand an active engagement from the visitor. From my own perspective as someone who makes gardens, it's very interesting, and it gives me a lot of confidence to see that for millennia in Japan, garden makers have had this confidence to set out a poetic way of seeing. It's not simply they have a lawn, you can walk anywhere you like on the lawn. It's not. It is, as I say, it's like a piece of dance choreography that the garden maker, the garden designer, is able to set out literally a poem, a visual poem for the garden visitor. And that's important because it sets the garden amongst the highest arts. It belongs to poetry, it belongs to philosophy, to religion, to any of the Zen arts even. So I think there's a lot that we can learn about the garden's capacity for abstract, conceptual, philosophical proposition, prompt, possibility. And as a garden maker, for me, looking at the Japanese garden early on in my career was absolutely essential in understanding what the potential of the garden can be. take on the idea of the Japanese garden, take on those tools that the Japanese gardener has historically used, and to make them relevant today is a real challenge. Now, to be a gardener, and I am a gardener myself as well, is to actually make something, to understand and to be close to a plant, and then to nurture it into its full potential. And that might be in Japan, and in what I'm trying to do, to try and draw out the poetic qualities of that plant and to really understand it by intuition, because essentially gardening is an art of compassion.